Hey guys, Zach here, Catoctin CrossFit. I wanted to bring you some information on some lower body movements we're going to start implementing moving forward called the hip thrust, and this is going to be in conjunction with or coupled with a glute bridge. We'll go through both of them, but respectively they're very similar in terms of setup, how you would execute them, how you would implement them or add them into a strength program, and then the loading options thereof. I'm going to take you through the setup, how you guys, what you guys need to set up this movement, tools required, mechanic behind it, and then a bunch of different varied loading options and rep and set scheme or technique patterns that we can implement with it. So looking at the hip thrust itself, this is going to be done on an elevated platform. How high? You're looking at roughly half the height of your knee. So if you stand next to a box or a raised object, measure off the shin. It can be grander than that, even plus 2 to 4 inches, okay? But a good rule of thumb is roughly half the height. You can take it up from there slightly. Looking at the setup behind the motion, the upper back is going to be supported right at or slightly above the shoulder blades on the elevated platform. And when you come to a full bridge or rise up of the hip motion, we want to look for the knees to be stacked directly over the ankles. Toe position on this guy, we're going to have toes completely forward or out a few degrees, which should mimic more of your squat style pattern, okay? However you guys typically square the toes up to squat, but it's always a little bit safer and can be more correct in lieu of caution just to stick them completely forward and it'll work for you. Looking at the hip angle at the top, it's gonna, so through your range of motions in your exercises with this, it's gonna almost look like your hips don't fully extend. That's okay, and that's the top end of the range of motion. If you guys look over, I'm driving up and it looks like my hip is almost scooped in slightly still. That's as high as I need to go through this, okay? And we're gonna talk a little bit about back patterns moving out of this. If I drive the hip fully open, I actually start to tilt or rotate my pelvis posteriorly, swiveling under. In turn, I'm losing my lumbar curve, okay? I've now moved my back under load. I don't wanna do that, all right? So don't force the full hip drive up, find full contraction of the glutes, and then lower it back down to the ground, okay? Looking at the hinge and the back angle involved in this. When you guys are set up and your upper back's on the platform, we're gonna think about locking in the body as a unit, all right? So from the neck down to the pelvis, we're gonna maintain a strict, straight line throughout, right? Bracing the abdominal muscles, thinking about driving the heels and feet through the floor. As I press away from it, in turn, I will swivel up as a unit and then control the down or descent back towards the floor, okay? Driving up and then swiveling back down. Eyes can remain forward. I like them actually to remain forward. Again, it's more important that the back angle does not move, all right? So we want to really focus on locking in the lower back, the lumbar, minimizing any excessive rotating, swiveling of the pelvis or loss of that natural lumbar curve, okay? Another quick piece on driving and learning this hinge mechanic, and that's all it is a proper hinge, is moving the eyes through the motion, okay? So nothing's wrong with letting the head or gaze move through the hip thrust. Downstream, I want you to play with keeping them forward, but to learn it, this is helpful and it's okay to actually let the gaze go up or travel up towards the ceiling as you thrust your load towards off the ground, and then the eyes will travel back in front of you, okay? Regardless, it's important that you focus on the sternum being the focal point, okay, center of your chest. That is going to pivot or swivel throughout the thrusting motion, okay? So I always like to think about this as a flashlight on the front of my body, and when I'm at the beginning portion of the movement, it's shining forward. I'm gonna lock and brace the middle of my body, secure the back in, and then thrust or drive away from the floor, and my flashlight will start to shine up, 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 till it's almost completely pointed at the ceiling, and then it returns the light back forward, okay? So that'll help you get into the best and safest setup and allow you to execute them well if you really focus on that. I'm going to encourage you guys to start body weight with this, even video yourself a couple times, and look for any snaking or movement through your back before you add load, okay? Talking about glute bridges in respect of this, the bridge is exact same mechanics in terms of how we're using the glutes and hamstrings to get off the ground, except it's a little bit reduced range of motion because our back's going to be on the floor. So when you're set up for the bridge, tuck the shoulder blades back and in so you have a nice secured platform to push on the ground with, And then same mechanic, we're gonna lock in the hips, low back, pelvis, and drive against the floors. The hips go up, still almost simulating not a fully open hip crease, that's okay, and then lowering back down to the ground, okay? Produces a lot of the same results, slightly smaller range of motion, okay? Looking at load and options, how can you execute this and make it more challenging as you go? So again, I like you guys starting with some body weight work. Keep both feet on the ground, bridge up or hip thrust up, and then back down. You can take that immediately into some single leg play. Start to learn which leg is weaker, which leg is stronger, and executing the thrust or bridge on one leg instead of two. Barbells are fantastic for this. I love the barbell for the hip thrust. You can use a pad, a towel, any sort of comforting object to take the pressure off of your hips from the steel bar. But same concept, it'll sit in the pocket of the lap. Use your hands to brace the load and then thrust accordingly. You can sub the barbell for a dumbbell. Same concept, barbell's in the lap, I'm driving the load away from the ground. You can also use a kettlebell on your lap. A sandbag or any type of loaded sack will work as well if you put a sandbag on your lap. This also will replicate or allow you to replicate the same motion with some load. And you can take any one of those loaded objects into a single leg as well. So single leg, barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell, or sandbag, hip thrust, or glute bridge works in the same fashion, a little bit more challenging. Looking at some different tempos and hold patterns, if you will, or ways to execute the movement, not just a full range of motion, thrust up, thrust down. I'm going to encourage you guys to start with some pause patterns. So we want to look at actually pausing or contracting the glutes at the top of the motion. And you'll see I'm going to thrust up, keep the hip where it is, slightly scooped in, and then contract, 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 and just hold or resist the load from pushing me back down for even up to 3 to 10 seconds. And then I control the down and then find the thrust up again, continue through the holds here. 1 1/4 reps are another favorite of mine, and this is almost like a partial or a pulsing repetition. So I would drive the hips up, go 1/4 of the way back down, right back up, and then I return back to the start position. Okay, and this allows you to train inside of some of the harder positions in the motion and get an extra contraction of the glutes, more stress on the muscle, you get stronger. It's good stuff to play with. You can play with the tempoing of the repetition as well. Maybe we work really slow and controlled lower downs, and then I'm gonna be deliberate on my press up and then control slow, slow, slow swiveling. And that's a great tool to learn the hinge mechanic, okay? Be slow and deliberate, master that before you add speed or load. Going into speed, fast repetitions are a great way to burn out the movement in between or after a workout, a strength session. And literally, body weight works for this, lighter loads. But once you're locked in, as long as you don't lose any mechanical integrity, add some speed and quick repetitions through your set scheme here, okay? And you notice I'm just driving thrust, thrust, thrust quickly, okay? Single leg work in conjunction with a double leg pattern is a great way to pre-fatigue yourself and allow you to focus on more of the weaker link or weaker leg. So I would do even an unloaded single leg bridge on my weak leg. Let's say it's my left, all right? You notice I'm bridging up on the left leg. I would do a set here. Then I would do single leg on the right for a set. Then I'm going to find the floor with both legs and continue another set immediately into it. And maybe for the double leg one, I add some load, right? I grab my barbell or dumbbell there and I go through my thrust pattern, all right? But it's a great way to pre-fatigue and help bring up that lagging side of your body. These are all great motions to implement in place of or in conjunction with a back squatting program to keep a lot of the rump gains that we've made and don't lose any of that hip extension strength that you guys have worked so hard to get. So have fun with it. Fire me some questions back. It's going to be a fun road getting into these things. Go get after it, guys.